January the 12th to order. I'd like to have council adopt the agenda of January 3rd. Councilor Shagan, second. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of December the 15th of the Committee of the Whole meeting? Councilor Shagan, second Councilor Thompson. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of December the 15th?
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Butler, Councilor Shagan. Carried.
Oh,
No, you're still good.
am I still
Yeah, you're
good?
still good. Next one.
This is for the regular minutes?
So Councilor Butler, are you making an amending motion to amend those minutes to reflect that change?
If council would allow, I know it's already been carried, but if council would permit that, I would make that motion that it would be put at the end of all the verbal reports given.
It's a pretty fancy system. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In as much as it already has been carried, I don't think it's a big deal. In what order it is, but in as much as the mayor has the ability to bring back any resolution within 1 month of it passing, he could bring this back for discussion and for it to be put on once again. So I ask the mayor use that ability now to bring it back.
So,
Okay, then I would put the motion forward to amend the minutes as I've stated.
I'll second.
Councilor Shagan. All in favor? So carried. Now we move on to adopt the minutes of the special meeting of December the 15th. The go-in camera meeting also.
The short one.
All in favor? Carried. All right, let's adopt the special minutes of January the 6th. Councilor Butler. Second, Councilor Thompson.
And discussion on that one.
Discussion.
Mr. Mayor. It was stated in the special meeting minutes that I was the seconder on the first issue of business for discussion, and in my recollection, that was seconded by Councilor Thompson at that meeting. So I'd make a motion to amend the minutes to state that.
Do I have a second? So carried.
Excuse me, Your Worship, could you please repeat which section in the minutes
Oh.
you're amending?
Is the motion
It was under business for and it was section A.
urban management workshop?
The original motion.
move on to reports and questions from members of council. We'll have our verbal reports of council, starting with Councilor Ross.
But we're asking now through the motion to opt out completely of decisions that have been made without our consultations. I arranged to have a meeting with Rolly Russell, and I've spoken to him already, and I'm meeting with him again tomorrow, who is the director of the RDKB, and as the alternate, I'm looking forward to being brought up to speed on what's going on there, and attending the RDKB 101 trail. I received a request from Graham Watt recently and he's asked to appear before council, and he will apply to do that. And he's also would like to talk about, and I'm just giving you the heads up here, about putting on a half-day workshop for council and managers to talk about water conservation, about the revised Kettle River report, and there will be a motion that will follow Graham's appearance before council, because there will be a decision to be made about spending to put on this workshop for council and staff. I've had several members of the community approach me to discuss the closure of the medicine tree, and I've taken note of that and the people who have approached me on that issue. I've heard again from the Agricultural Society. They weren't really clear that I had officially resigned as vice president. So I've made it more official that I have resigned as vice president, and once again, they've approached me and asked me that they become an official committee of the council, and that there be somebody from council who act as representative at the Agricultural Society and as a liaison. I read the subdivision bylaws, which are here, and enjoyed that very much. Attended the special meeting that was called for January 6th. At the time, we decided that we passed a motion to send Councillor Hammett to the deer management workshop put on by UBCM, and that's why she's not here today. Look forward to her report. I also am very interested and received some information from other municipalities in BC talking about a day for our common future, which is talking about climate action and developing sustainable action plans as we move forward to build our own strategic plan here in Grand Forks. And also, Canada is due to present its own climate action plan. And I think it would be a great idea if Grand Forks had our own climate action plan as we move forward. And it's something that we can talk about as we discuss our common future as citizens of British Columbia. And that's the closing of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Figure out how to work this. Okay, I don't have a council report. I have the next one, which would be the representative to the RD report. I do have one comment on the previous report from Councillor Ross, do we need a motion to authorize attendance at the presentation? So RDKB 101 in Trail to cover expenses. Do we need a motion for that? Because I'll make that motion.
Councilor Crowe, do I have a second?
Um,
Councilor Rashagan, can we have a discussion? Yeah, there you go.
I also want to attend Regional District 101, so is your motion all encompassing for those members of council wanting to attend?
Yes.
Thank you.
We've all been invited, so.
So the
I'll
motion's-
second your motion.
Councilor Butler,
So
second.
everything's seconded.
Okay.
All in favor? So carried. Councilor Rashagan.
Oh. It's no different than last time.
And then you left it, and you press the button.
Press it harder.
Talk louder.
Oh, good, yeah. Somebody else on? Are you off?
We're all offline.
Okay.
Yours was blinking, so maybe the battery's dead.
I don't know, I just was thinking, what, before we left City Hall last time, where these things didn't work out. No, it's quite already. For my council report, all I want to do is wish everybody a happy new year here and make one motion, and that would be to appoint Councilor Butler as the representative from the city of Grand Forks onto the Recreation Commission of the Regional District.
Councilor Thompson,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
That's all I have.
Councilor Thompson. Those words.
Thank you. On December 17th, I attended an information session at Community Futures with members from their organization, along with representatives from the Boundary Regional Chamber of Commerce and Selkirk College. Each made a presentation regarding the services and supports they are able to provide to our community. All are eager to work with the city to ensure the services and supports they provide meet the needs of the city, and they are more than willing to meet with the council to discuss any issues that may arise. At the December 15th regular meeting of council, I gave notice of motion that I would be bringing forward a resolution to amend the City of Grand Forks Procedure Bylaw number 1946, and that motion will be dealt with when it comes up on the agenda. I wish to advise that I have resigned my position as chair of the Phoenix Foundation of the Boundary Communities effective December 2014. And I thank former Councillor Gary Smith for stepping up to the plate and taking on that chairmanship. At this time, I have not resigned as a director, as I have requested Mayor Conrad to consider appointing me as the city's liaison to the board. I have resigned as a director on the board of the Grand Forks and District Fall Fair Society. Water meters in the city is still a subject, receiving a few negative comments. The most recent being this past weekend on a Facebook page that was discussing the results of the Deer Cull opinion poll. This council needs to address the issue of water meters and to determine the direction this council wants to go. It is an elephant in the room that, in my opinion, must be placed on the table for debate with the ultimate goal of providing direction to our management and staff so that they can manage their departmental work plans accordingly. Therefore, I make the following motion. Resolved that the manager of operations be directed to prepare a report on the status of water meter installations as at the end of December 2014. And further, that this report be considered by council at the January 26, 2015 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second your motion.
Councilor Butler. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? So carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. That is my report.
Councilor Butler. Yeah, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate this opportunity given to us in the procedures bylaw to bring community issues for discussion and ask questions pertaining to city operations. Over the past month, I've devoted my time to reading through that lengthy subdivision bylaw and the resumes that we've received for the CAO posting. I've also enjoyed doing further research online into the many issues coming before council. I also attended the workshop put on by Community Futures that Councillor Thompson detailed for you, so I don't need to go into that. We also just had our largest snowfall of the year, and I know that staff worked tirelessly on that. And it's a touchy subject this time of year when you get that big snowfall. It's hotly debated online as well as on the streets. And one issue that I heard brought up quite often that I'd like to put before council for consideration is that previously we used to plow the snow into the middle of the streets in the downtown core. Then it'd be loaded into dump trucks for removal. This allowed for ample parking in front of businesses. And the last snowfall, the strategy was changed so that snow was pushed into large piles at the corners and in front of businesses. And not only did this block parking spaces in front of some stores, but it also obstructed the view of drivers. And I understand this option, it does seem to be cheaper. There's less equipment and man hours required. But in the hopes of supporting our downtown business owners who brought this to my attention, I'd like to know if staff is considering maybe changing the plan for snow removal in the downtown core during times of heavy snowfall. That's my only question. So I guess that's just staff, if staff's able to respond to that.
Your worship, perhaps
Through
maybe
the
the manager of
mayor.
operations.
Sorry,
could,
I believe we've already addressed that, have we not, to staff and administration?
Yes, your
Briefly
worship, I believe that the manager of operations has already changed a little bit that's going to be happening. Is there anything that you'd like to elaborate on that?
I believe there was a brief discussion on the protocol already.
Yes, yeah, and that's an option we can definitely look at. Try it next snowfall if you want, or come up with a game plan that way.
Okay, I mean, you're the expert on it. I'm sure you've looked at both options and you know what's best for it. I've just noticed, people are asking questions, so I'm just wondering if it is practical to go back to that in the middle of the road so that we don't block the businesses.
If I may, it was more cost effective, obviously, doing it the way we just did it, but more troublesome for businesses, and so we could try that if you want, and I can maybe do a report on cost and do an analysis.
Thank you.
As the mayor's report, on December 12th, I met with MLA Linda Larson along with our acting CAO Diane Heinrich and our acting CCO Sarah Winton for an informal meet and greet. The discussion centered mostly around government grants, challenges facing the city, future plans and initiatives that the city was planning to work on. Then on January 7th of this year, I met with MP Alex Adamanenko, along with our acting CAO Diane and our acting CCO Sarah. General city topics were casually discussed, future plans and initiatives of the city again. Mr. Adamanenko mentioned he would be willing to be of assistance to the city in any way that he could help. In conclusion, I would like to thank staff and management for a job well done in the relocation process back to home base. Great job on our council chambers and offices. Special mention goes out to Daniel Drexler, our tech guru, for his marvelous work on getting us all set up again. Everyone should be commended for their hard work and dedication. That is all. I would now like to thank members of council for their reports, and I would like to have a motion to accept their reports. Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Butler. All in favor? So carried. We'll now move on to the report, council's report for the rep for the RDKB. Councillor Grog.
Thank you. On January the 8th, I attended the first meeting with the new directors for the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan Steering Committee. And the meeting was to bring everybody up to date on what had transpired and look at the draft terms of reference and committee composition and committee meeting timelines, implementation of priorities and allocated resources, I did bring some information back for council, and in the past, we used to have a place where we could bring that information to share with other councilors. Right now, I just have it in paper. I don't have an electronic copy, but once I get that, I will send that across. There will be an article coming out, I believe, either this newspaper on Wednesday or maybe next Wednesday, which is probably entitled Hitting the Ground Running. And that's by the consultant Graham Watt. And it explains where we are in the process and the reaction of the directors and stuff. So that's about all I have for right now.
Thank you, Councillor Crowell. I'd like to have a motion to accept the report. Councillor Ross, second Councillor Rushagan. All in favor? So carried. We'll now have recommendations from staff for decision. First off, our Chief Financial Officer will be presenting the resolution for the Rotary Spray Park purchasing policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you can see from the request for decision, back in February 2014, the Rotary Club presented to the city a presentation for a proposal for a spray park at City Park. They had three options. Council voted to support option 3 and decided to support it from the SLAG fund at that point. In our budget, however, we budgeted $300,000, but we didn't know how we were going to fund it, so we had funded it strictly from grants at that point. Then we came back for the budget amendment and requested that we have $200,000 of it. By this point, we were starting to get more details of the park worked out, and it requested $200,000 from the SLAG fund and the additional $100,000 to be funded from grants and donations. To date, the Rotary Club has almost achieved that goal of the $100,000. They've done many fundraising events. It worked really hard to get this project off the ground. So had we not had the Rotary Club to help us, we would have put the project out to tender at the very beginning and let a company manage the whole project. But because we had the Rotary Club, the valuable resource and the $100,000 they were willing to work towards the project, we went in on a joint project with them. So they've been doing almost all of the work. We've met several times, our manager of operations, Roger, and myself, and the former CAO, Doug, met several times with the Rotary Club to discuss the plans, to see how we could help them, anything we could do to help them along on the project. But they've done the majority of the work for this project. They would like to purchase some spray park equipment. There are two pieces. They're approximately $25,000 each. They're pretty specific pieces of equipment that they would like to purchase. Would normally, by our purchasing policy, require 3 quotes. We're asking for this one project only for these purchases of equipment that the purchasing policy be waived. Only because it's going to be impossible for Lynn to get, or for the Rotary Club to get 3 quotes on this specific piece of equipment. It's pretty tailored to the one company that they've been working with so far. So that's about the summary of it. Are there any questions?
Councillor Thompson.
I have no questions, Your Worship, but I would put forward a motion that council waive the requirements of purchasing policy 802 for the Rotary Spray Park joint project between the City of Grand Forks and the Grand Forks Rotary Club for the purchase of spray park equipment.
Do I have a second? Second, Councillor Rushagan. All in favor?
Discussion.
Or any discussion first? Sorry.
I think it needs to be pointed out also that the Rotary Club is not registered for GST, and therefore if the city were to purchase that, they will get the rebate back, and that can be applied to do more things for the spray parks. So it's a one-time waiver of the policy, and I encourage council to support that.
Any other comments? All in favor? So carried.
Can I just, have a point of order here?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor? I think we've just missed something in our agenda. Corporate officers report, RFD procedure bylaw, reports, questions, and inquiry from council. Is this something that we've missed?
No,
Yes.
no, Councilor Crowley just did it.
Okay.
No, the other one before that. The corporate
Yes.
office report. The RFD procedure bylaw, chief administrative officers reports, questions and
And your worship, those reports are the reports that are just set up for council's reports in the regional district. It's just part of the procedure bylaw that we put those reports in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to our information items. Arlene Parkinson of the Association of the Kootenai Boundary Local Governments. Posing the notice of annual general meeting and second call for resolutions for 2015. Councillor Thompson.
I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to bring this forward, but I see Councillor Ross has a very comprehensive resolution with regard to CETA. Do we want to consider forwarding that to the KBLG for their consideration?
One of my therefore be it resolved is that we do get support from other municipalities as well as the province and the feds. So I would suggest that we do that, and we could also send it to the UBCM.
Point of order, for this to be discussed, there needs to be a motion on the floor.
Yeah, so I think it's premature.
Okay, then can we bring that forward when you make your resolution?
It could be part of the discussion.
So do you have a motion on that?
Just to receive it for information, yes.
Second, Councillor Rashagan. All in favor? So carried. Our second item of information is from our electrical utility consultant, Alex Love. It's the summary of info of the electric utility rates.
Okay, maybe I can just add a little bit verbally on 3 points relating to rates, and then if there's any questions, I can hopefully address them. The first point is on power purchase and sales. And the majority of our operating expenses, about 75% in fact, is power purchase, and power purchase and sales move in lockstep, meaning if there's a very cold winter, our sales go up, so do our power purchase. So our revenues and our expenses sort of going up and down somewhat together. Therefore, the FortisBC wholesale rates are very important to us, as they are for our single largest purchase for the utility. And the current FortisBC rates are interim rates, which means they could change. And if that happens, we will have to assess the impact on us, specifically what the timing of that change is and what the amount of the change is. But nevertheless, the best information we have right now is the interim rates are going to become permanent rates. The second point is on load and sales. So in 2014, it was an anomaly year with lower than expected energy sales and also power purchases due to milder than average weather. And our forecast for 2015 is for a typical year. And therefore, it appears to have a 2.1% load increase over 2014, which is huge for an electric utility. But really, that's not the case. The truth of the matter is 2014 was a very low load year. And the last point is on rate timing. So of the two rate options put forward, I'm recommending the lower rate change, which is 2.5% annual, as it will meet the revenue needs for the utility. With the timing of it on March 1st, it would have to be 3.125% in order to come out to 2.5% for the year. And that is a good time of year for rate change because even though the rate is going up, it's half occurring when customer bills are going down because their consumption is reducing. So if there were any questions related to electrical rates, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councillor Crog.
Yeah, are we discussing the whole document or just that part of it?
I think the whole document.
Because there is a part of the document that you listed, and I believe it's the optional service offered to those customers who prefer not to have a radio read meter at their service entrance. So that brings up the concept of manual meter reading. And I believe that Councillor Butler had mentioned before about if people were on a payment plan, would that still require the manual reading charge per billing cycle? Or would that, because it says here the setup charge $158. This thing, oh, mine's dying. Okay, just irritating me. So, that's what happened to Michael.
Yes.
So, there's the 158 setup charge, and then it says, 1453 per billing cycle for manual read. And right now our billing cycles are every 2 months.
Correct.
So that would be 6 times a year. But if somebody was on a equal payment plan, could that be done once a year? So it'd only be $14 instead of the 60, so the 80 something dollars.
So a couple points on that. So yeah, the manual read charge, the $14.50 something, is intended to recover the cost of actually reading the meter. So if it was only read once, then it would be $14.58. Yeah. Now, those are 2014 rates, so they'd be slightly different for 2015, but in that ballpark.
So my question would be, Mr. Love, so if the person or the individual, the family goes on an equal payment plan, this was my question too, that Councillor Krog had mentioned, there would only be one manual billing fee
Per year.
per year
Yeah.
for those individuals that go on equal.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'd mentioned when I asked you before about the option of having an analog meter as opposed to a digital meter, and you'd said that analog meters weren't available. I'm just curious why that is.
Well, I guess I can't say why, but I can say what has happened. Meters have to be re-verified every so often, and 2013 was the last year that the analog meters, when we say analog, we mean the spinning disc type, could be re-verified. So they're not re-verifiable anymore as deemed by Measurement Canada.
And are the digital ones CSA approved?
I'm not sure if they are or not, which may seem like an odd answer. CSA has a whole raft of different standards, and I don't know if they have one for digital meters or not. Well, their standard would be for electrical meters, regardless of digital or not.
Councillor Rishagan.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that we're getting a little bit off topic here. This document has to do with rate structures, not types of meters installed at houses. And in as much as we want to have a motion on the floor to receive and to refer to the committee of the whole on the 26th, I would make that motion at this point.
Second. Councillor. All in favor of that motion? So carried.
Thanks for your time.
So are we able to receive for information as the electrical utility rates for 2015 will be introduced at the COTW on January 26th?
That was the motion.
Okay. We now have information from Councillor Christine Thompson on the amendment to the procedure bylaw. Amendment to the City of Grand Forks procedure bylaw. Councillor Thompson.
The motion reads as follows. Resolved that the City of Grand Forks procedure bylaw number 1946 be amended to include the following. written reports from members of council attending conferences, seminars, or workshops that extend beyond one day outside of the city must be included on the regular meeting agenda no later than the second regular meeting of council following the conclusion of such conference, seminar, or workshop. At the discretion of council, failure to provide such written report may result in the offending member of council not being authorized to attend future conferences, seminars, or workshops. 2, verbal reports from members of council attending conferences, seminars, or workshops lasting one full day or less will be accepted. Be it further resolved that the order of business at regular meetings, section 12.3, clause 1, be amended to reflect these changes.
So the recommendation is the council directs it to staff bringing forward a report regarding the amendments. Do I have a motion?
I made that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll
Council. All in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion, go ahead.
Speaking to the motion, when I was on council previously and we had attended UBCMs and AKBLGs and other seminars, there were concurrent workshops that different members of council went to. And while reports came back, they were verbal, and I find that when I wanted to review something, there was nothing hard. I mean, the minutes reflect very briefly what was reported on. And sometimes councilors attend the same concurrent workshop, but they may get something out of it different than what I have. And so for future reference and to be able to go back and refer and research is the reason I am recommending that this amendment be made to the procedure final.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak against this motion. I think it's very draconian in very many ways. I also think it's very vague in as much as a written report from a member of council attending. What does that written report look like? How many pages? What are you looking for? Can I just say I attended the UBC? All the information for these conferences are available on their websites. It doesn't tell me what it's looking for. One, number two, it also, how is it going to be offending member of council is the wording here. Is it going to be a committee that's going to be a disciplinary committee to deal with these written reports? Is not good enough? Are they going to be graded? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. This is politics. If somebody wants to put out a report, they're more than welcome to, and if they don't, that's their choice too, if they feel that it's necessary. Like I say, everything's available on the websites for as well as in books and anywhere else you want to look for most of this information. It doesn't tell you what should be in the report. If you don't file a report, what's it going to look like? Is the report good enough? Is it not good enough? It's far too vague for me. I see the concept as being a good one. It's just so vague that I can't support it at this time.
Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak in favor of this amendment, of this resolution. I think it's just due diligence. Often, Mr. Mayor, there is a cost associated with attending seminars, events, workshops, and I think it's accountability to one another and to the community. Sure, certainly there's lots of information in books and on the internet, but we go there as it's a privilege to be there, and we learn things. That information is important that we share it. When we sent Councillor Hammett, when we agreed to that Councillor Hammett would go to the Deer Management Workshop, we were very clear. We look forward to hearing what she has to say and for her to write it down. I know that if I'm attending a workshop, I need to take notes. There will also be material made available to me that I would like to come back and share. And I just think it's a point of how long that report is. I don't think that's important. The fact is, we're professional, be professional about it. We make it succinct, to the point, relevant information. And if I give a report that's too lengthy, I don't mind having my colleagues on council saying, Colleen, can you just pare it down a bit? That's fine, but at least I'm giving a written report and I'm doing due diligence and I'm showing that I have attended, I've taken it seriously, and I'm acknowledging the privilege it is for me to be there on their behalf.
Councillor Crawford.
I agree with the concept Councillor Thompson has, which is written reports. When I first read the first part, I had similar concerns to Councillor Rishagan, because it says just written reports from members attending conferences that extend beyond one day. It might be more clear if it was a written report on activities at the conference, or activities or information, or something more succinct than just a written report. More detail in it.
I'm certainly open to an amendment to that.
Thompson. Any other comments or discussion? So we have a motion on the table, all in favor? Carried.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Recorded, please.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Councillor Rishagan. Okay. We now have information from Councillor Colleen Ross in regards to the resolution from council to opt out of Canada Comprehensive Economic CETA. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to read the entire whereases or just go to the therefore? Read the whereases? Okay. Whereas the City of Grand Forks, British Columbia opting out of Canada-EU Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, which is also known as CETA. Whereas the Canada-EU CETA is an ominous, I meant to write omnibus, but ominous is actually is an ominous trade agreement between Canada and the European Union, which includes rules that will limit the power of provincial and municipal governments to use their purchasing decisions to create local jobs, protect the environment, and support local economies. And whereas purchasing power has long been a key policy tool for municipalities and is becoming even more important in the face of the extraordinary economic, social, environmental, and ecological pressures currently confronting Canadian communities. Procurement choices can play a crucial role not only in promoting local economic development, local food production, and green technologies, but also in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the community's ecological footprint through regional sourcing of goods and services. And whereas coverage of transit and energy procurement appears to violate the fourth of seven principles of free and fair trade from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which states that there may be industries of strategic significance to a particular region, such as transit or projects where considerations of quality, public benefit, environmental protection, or business ethics means that a local government may wish to implement minimum Canadian content levels. And whereas the City of Grand Forks already has an open and fair procurement policy, and it is not the international norm for municipal governments or even most WTO member countries to be covered by procurement agreements such as the one proposed in the CETA, and whereas other aspects of CETA related to municipally delivered services and investment rules that could result in corporate lawsuits against municipal policy have not been disclosed in the federal government's technical briefing on the CETA, therefore be it resolved that Council requests 1, the province of British Columbia issue a clear, permanent written exemption for the City of Grand Forks from the Canada-EU CETA, and that it otherwise protects and guarantees the power of municipalities, hospitals, school boards, utilities, universities, and other sub-federal agencies to use public procurement as one of the many tools to create local jobs, protect the environment, and support local development, and that 2, the province of British Columbia disclose to municipalities and the public its procurement services and investment offers to the EU, explain the impacts of CETA, the impact CETA would have on municipal governance, and give MUSH, which is municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals, sector bodies, the freedom to decide whether or not they will be bound by CETA provisions, and that 3, the resolution be sent to provincial and federal government ministers responsible for CETA negotiations, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the British Columbia Hospital Association, the BC University Association, and the BC School Board Association, federations of labor councils, and unions representing workers in municipalities, provinces, and territories, and any other relevant bodies for consideration and circulation. I so move.
Okay, any discussion? Councillor Thompson?
I will second that. For discussion. And I would just like to open discussion. I'm fully aware, and I think it's amazing that previous council did write a letter to Minister Fast at the time. It was dated April 4th, 2012. And at that time, they asked that they had concerns about the agreement. And at that time, the agreement was still under negotiations behind closed doors. There had been leaked documents. But now it's actually been signed off on in September. And so I think it's time to approach this again and just say, okay, you've signed off on it. We asked to be consulted. We weren't consulted. There was no transparency. And so we just want to opt out. And that's where we're at today. And today in the news at CBC, we're already in trouble with NAFTA. There was, under these trade agreements, including NAFTA, which is not nearly as onerous as this, there is a body that oversees these trade agreements to ensure that, for instance, there's been no environmental impact due to the trade agreement. And there is an international body that wants to do an environmental assessment on the tailing ponds in the tar sands. And because of our NAFTA agreement, Canada is blocking that access to do environmental assessment on the impact of the tailing ponds. Because obviously oil is key to trade through NAFTA, which is trade in the oil industry, oil and access to oil from Mexico and the USA. And Canada I think it's the second time now that it's denying the right of this international environmental body to have access to assessment on environmental impact due to resource extraction. So anyway, I think it's timely, and it's just time to revisit it and let them know that it's just not. We're expected to be transparent and open. And so to the federal government.
Councillor Crowe?
I think Councillor Thompson was first.
It wouldn't matter, but I'd like to thank Councillor Ross for the comprehensive work that she did on this resolution and the research and the information that she shared with all of council. And as I was saying earlier, I think that this resolution, parts of it needs to go to the AKBLG so that it can be considered by the local governments in our area. And if endorsed, would then go to the UBC for consideration at their convention. Having said that, we probably have to make the whereases more concise, because I think you're only allowed two to go to the AKBLG. But I think this is a very important issue, and that one that we, as a not just a council, but as a municipality as a whole, needs to get behind.
Councillor Crowe?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to start, but it's another free trade agreement. I know there's tons of information, a lot of it negative, because of that lack of transparency that we saw, and people are reiterating the fact that it can affect us at the municipal level and will affect our purchase local policies and all that. We already don't have that because of TILMA and the internal, the AIG or IGA or something, which is the Canadian Internal Agreement. So they've taken a lot of that stuff away from our own country, took that away from us rather than going to our federal government and Europe So there are some things there, but the actual motion is, I guess, what I'm having problems with in the way of supporting, because the first one asked the province of British Columbia to issue us a written exemption. I don't think the province of British Columbia has any power to give us a written exemption. So it would be more likely that that would be, if anything, the federal government, which they're probably not going to do. So that part of it, and I do notice that this is similar to almost word for word near the end for the one that went to the UBCM in 2012. Oh, here it is here, from the city of New Westminster. And basically the bottom of it looks pretty well the same. And I had a problem with theirs as well, because it says exempt New Westminster or exempt Grand Forks. It should be, especially if it's going to the AKBLG, it's got to embrace, it's not just us, it's everybody. So we're the ones that put it forward, the city of Grand Forks, but it says, it should say for local government, not for us to have an exemption and other people not to. So I know, I'm pretty well figuring that we might get it kicked back from UBCM, because a lot of times I'll look at it and I think it was resolution C25 in 2012. And if they've had one similar, or they think the intent is similar, then sometimes they can kick it back and just say, oh, we've already dealt with that. So I like the idea. I think it needs a tiny bit of adjustment, as Councillor Thompson said. The shorter the therefore be it resolves, as well as the whereas is, to try and have the same impact, but more, I guess, more for our region and all the local governments in our province. The other, one last note on that is I do like the fact, like I've been trying to read through it and stuff, and I do like the fact that if the Canadian government signs off on it, they don't sign off or they exempt like parts of Ontario and Quebec, I think. They said, oh, yeah, everything but this, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, isn't it all or nothing, right? So I would just like it to be simpler, and yeah, that's my comments on it.
Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with everything that Councillor Krog said there. And in regards to it being bounced back from the UBCM, it has been brought to the UBCM floor both in 2010, 2011, and 2012, and I believe it's been tried to be since and has been bounced back. So this would not be, it's been dealt with at that level 3 different occasions, and it doesn't look like, and typically they don't consecutively bring back same motions or with the same premise or idea.
Councillor Krog.
Just, I would suggest, and again, this is my opinion, that if the table is all for this, that we just have a look at it, and I know Councillor Ross did tons of work on it. Just the fact that all of the whereas is just incredible. Like, not, this is just that's a lot of work to put into that. But I think that we can change it so it doesn't get kicked back, right, from the AKBLG or UBCM.
Councillor Ross.
I'd just like to request a point of information. When you say kickback, does
Yeah.
it mean that it was passed and then when it was reintroduced, it becomes redundant? Because
Yes.
it was redundant. Because it had been passed already?
If I may, what happens when you receive, and I probably have all UBCM booklets in here, is once a motion is brought forward, the committee that looks at the resolutions will look at similar resolutions. And at the bottom of the package of the resolution, it will say refer to or also seen as or similar to. And it'll give you a year, a booklet number, and a resolution number. And eventually, after some of the resolutions of similar fashion, they will stop accepting them because there's 500-600 resolutions in a book over a 3-day period.
Okay, so it becomes redundant.
Yes, so,
Okay.
so and then it'll say on there that it won't be accepted for this reason because it's been dealt with this year, this year, this year, and then it's passed all 3 years, or whatever the case may be, or defeated, or been dealt with in a different or similar motion.
Councillor Crockett.
Yeah, we have one thing going for us. These were in 2012 before it was signed off, right? So anything that comes now, we can fly under the banner of, yes, it's been signed off. And that is mentioned in here, but I think it kind of gets a little bit lost. So if we can make it, I don't know, more updated, because the minute they see some of the same verbiage, their brain will just shut off. Right? No, seriously.
Councillor Butler.
I'm just wondering if it's possible, Mr. Mayor, to have 2 resolutions done up, one for us to send personally to the federal government, and then one to send to the AKBLG and on to the UBCM.
Any comment on that? Guess we could direct that to staff. Would that be possible?
Your worship, if that's the wish of council, they could have 2 separate resolutions if that's what they would like.
Councillor Thompson.
Just, what is the deadline to submit those to KBLG? Is it the end of February?
23rd of February.
Yeah, the second call for final submissions. We just had earlier on the agenda.
Okay, so then I guess where I'm going with this is that if we were to adopt this resolution, could a second, more concise resolution be brought up at our next regular meeting? I would, through you, your worship, to Councillor Rock, if that could be done.
Councillor Ross.
I'm just having a couple of thoughts here. I could entertain a friendly amendment because the whereases don't really matter, so therefore be it resolved. So I would entertain friendly amendments. The other option would be to defeat this motion. I could just go back, rewrite it, make it more relevant. I know what you're talking about old verbiage.
Yeah.
It basically, it hasn't changed. I have updated the wording to reflect the fact that it's a done deal.
Yeah.
I can tighten it. I can tighten it for sure. And so what I'm proposing is you defeat my motion. I can go back, I can rewrite it, and I can reintroduce it. And then another question I have for Councillor Wershagen and Councillor Krog is, if we pass a motion, it has to, the motion has to go to the UBCM or AKBLG as we, exactly worded as we pass it. So therefore, we would pass this motion saying written exemption for the city of Grand Forks, because this is what we're talking about. And then on the floor at the AKBLG, can't somebody just propose a friendly amendment there saying, you know, I propose that we replace the wording, the city of Grand Forks, with all municipalities within AKBLG.
British Columbia.
And then we could accept that, I accept that as a friendly motion, and then we debate them.
Councillor Wershagen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, in regards to the first point about defeating this motion, I would recommend not defeating this motion, in as much as if it's defeated, you cannot bring any motion back that is similar for 6 months. I would ask that you just rescind your motion. So this will be voted on and just take it back off the floor. Since it's defeated, anything that's similar in fashion, even if you just change the wording, as long as the concept remains similar, it won't be able to be brought back to the floor for 6 months, according to our own bylaws. And just looking through the 2010, 11, 12 UBCM booklets and the results and recommendations of the UBCM in regards to CETA and the exemptions, what was recommended and was passed was the same for all 3 motions, and that was to refer to the FCM. In other words, we don't want to deal with this pushing on to the FCM.
Yeah.
So you can't imagine it'll be any different this time around either.
Oh, well. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to table then. Is that what we're going to table?
Just rescind it.
Just rescind it?
Yeah.
Withdraw.
Withdraw, that's a better word for it. Withdraw your motion. Take it off the table.
and bring it back on the 26th.
Yeah.
Well, is that, so I would move to rescind my motion? Or
No,
do I
you just.
This is withdraw it.
Yes.
And then come back with it?
Yeah.
Okay, I will rescind my motion.
Withdraw.
I will
Withdraw.
withdraw my
Withdraw,
motion, and I'll come back with it at our next.
Okay.
Well, we don't need to.
No?
It's too important an issue, you want to.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah,
to notice.
yeah.
What other dreams did we squish?
Okay. Now have the Chief Financial Officer's report on council benefits. Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council is aware, they do have the option to participate in the UBCM group benefit plan that the city is participating in. That includes extended health, dental, optional life insurance, and optional accidental death and dismemberment. I've included a memorandum in the agenda with the cost per month of each of the packages for singles and families. And I believe council has a motion regarding the benefits. Are there any questions on the benefits?
Discussion.
We do need a motion.
Councilor Butler.
So is the chief financial officer asking council to make a motion to opt into this program? I'll make that motion then.
Councilor Butler, second.
I'll second that, as presented here, the council determines, to join the UBCM benefits
Yes.
program that includes covering the cost of medical
Medical
service.
service one.
Yeah.
So all in favor? All against? Carried. All right, now we have information presented by Jack Kuchin in regards to an idling bylaw, noise and air quality. And the recommendation is to receive this for information. Do we have any discussion?
I would move that the letter be received for
For
information.
information, okay, Councillor Thompson, do we have a second? Councillor Rashay, discussion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious if Mr. Kuchin is asking for a response from council on his letter?
There's nothing particular. I would imagine if it's being received and
I guess I'll ask that to staff then. Is Mr.
Yes.
Kuchin asking for a response to this letter? Or has he been responded to?
Your worship, we usually respond to letters, however, council asked us to bring any correspondence to mayor and council for council to give staff direction on any correspondence.
Councillor Crowe.
Yeah, as per a response, he's asking us to review the bylaw. And I've looked at the bylaw and it is, you can idle vehicles when it's below zero, right? And we've had that in the last little while, but now we're out of it. But then I think we're going back into it. So I've always thought that that was reasonable. Of course, I don't have a diesel idling outside my bedroom window either. But that's where the zero comes from, or where the zero would fit into it, 0 Celsius. So we should, or should we look at the anti-idling bylaw? Because that's what they're asking us to do. I looked at it and I thought it seemed pretty reasonable for the most part. And we end up with a lot of neighbor issues. And I'm not sure, you know, it would be nice if we had some kind of a resolution committee that would actually be able to sit down and have a couple of neighbors and discuss it. So either the guy doesn't know he's causing a problem, or he knows he's causing a problem, and he's doing it just to cause a problem, right? So, you know, it's a hard one. So we do need to respond though.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed that the bylaw enforcement officer is here tonight. And through you to him, can I ask whether or not he has met with Mr. Kuchin and if he has any comments with regard to this issue?
Yes, Mayor Conrad, I have met with Mr. Kuchin on 3 occasions now. But unfortunately, the neighbor that has been causing the issue with the idling truck, I have not been able to make contact with them to speak to them directly. And I think the biggest problem for Mr. Kuchin is the fact that this guy will go out in the morning and start up his truck and it'll run for 25 to 30 minutes. And that is really, truly unacceptable. You don't need to idle a vehicle that long.
So which bylaw is he impeding on? The idling
Well,
or
he
the
is-
noise or both?
Well, technically, he's not going against the idling bylaw because he's allowed to idle below 0.
But for only 30 minutes.
I haven't dug into it to see. I don't think there is a time limit. Is there?
I thought there was
Yeah.
a 3
Actually,
minute
there is
3
somewhere.
minutes.
or 3 minutes.
No person shall cause or permit a vehicle to idle for more than 3 minutes.
Unless it's below 0.
But
Unless it's below
it
0.
says, it's the 0.
Yeah, it's the
degrees
0
that
that's the
kicks that
catch-all.
out.
And that's the issue that we've had with this.
So that's where the loophole is.
That's,
Yeah.
Can we close the loophole?
that would be one for discussion with council. I really don't know how.
At least we can get over these issues if we can close
Yeah.
the loophole.
5 minutes, anytime summer or winter.
Well, there is a 5-minute time.
Yeah,
So Mr. Coban, we cannot recommend, rather than having neighbors go at each other,
but
that we
that's
make
what he said.
a change in the bylaw. Close up the
Actually,
loopholes.
Councillor Crog just made a notation there that the very bottom line has a 5-minute time limit, winter or summer. So really, it's just a matter of making contact with this other neighbor now. And,
Yeah, this is, sorry,
That's the
that's Mr. Kuchin's letter.
Yeah.
yeah, that's not the actual
That's not the
bylaw.
bylaw.
Yeah, and that's where I was
Scroll down
looking
for
for it.
Yeah, and I think that's what he would probably like to see in the bylaw, is the 5-minute, because I don't believe it is in there.
I thought it was 10 minutes.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I also wanted to state in the bylaw, it says that you are allowed to idle when it's over 30 degrees, and here in Grand Forks, we're over 30 degrees a lot of the time
Oh,
too,
really?
so.
Yes, and that,
Yeah, and also in the noise control bylaw, there was a clause talking about diesel engines not being allowed to be idled before a certain time, it was either, I think it was 7 in the morning.
yeah,
So if he's idling before that, I mean, he's out of the bounds of the noise control bylaw too.
yeah, the reference to the noise control bylaw with the above 30 was intended for refrigeration units on the transport trucks that are carrying vegetables and frozen goods. And it's those small motors on the trailers that are making the noise.
So why are we not able to make contact with this individual?
Well, I've been by his home several times, but I've just never been able to contact him. He's either at work or away or,
Well, he's gotta be around if he's idling his truck.
well, I'm not there at midnight. Because apparently he's working night shift or shifts. I've never been able to contact him.
Councillor Thompson.
Have you written to him, a letter stating we've had these complaints and?
No, I haven't yet.
Maybe we should act on that issue then.
Okay.
Give him a written warning.
We can do that. Well, certainly.
Councillor Butler.
Do we require a motion for that?
Yes,
No.
I was gonna ask him.
Can-
Councillor Crog.
Yeah, just, I don't like just the term written warning, because I don't think he's violated this, because he's exempted on the days when it's 0. But what was it yesterday, 2 degrees or something like that, so he'd be in violation.
If he idled yesterday.
if he idled yesterday,
Yeah,
but
these initial
Yeah.
complaints came in when we hit those sub-zero temperatures in November and December.
so
It
if
was
we
down to
could,
-15.
if we could send a letter saying that we've had these complaints, if, they would address them, rather than saying that they, you know, there's gonna be a penalty or follow-up, because technically I don't think he's violated it.
Unless of the diesel noise bylaw.
Well, he could, like, if it was me, I'd just say, because you're allowed to have perishable cargo, I'd just say I put my lunch in there. And if I don't idle my truck, it'll go bad. No, seriously, you could.
There we go with one of our loopholes again. You gotta close them. Counselor Warshagan.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I just, I realize that a lot of different, what's we're looking for here, my mind's really not with me, bylaws require a different amount of individuals to complain to about a certain incident for it to be acted upon. This is one person complaining about one other person. Does this bylaw allow for that to be the case, where it only takes one person to complain for there to be letters?
Supposed to have 2 written complaints.
So that's the concern that I have. If we start doing this and writing letters off one complaint, it's gonna pin neighbor after neighbor over and over and over again. They're gonna send their letters as opposed to you. They're gonna send them to city council. They'll be put on the agenda, and this will be the outcome every single time. These letters should be kept in confidence as far as I'm concerned, and after 2 letters, I believe that staff would take the proper and necessary actions on their own. This is not the venue, I don't believe, to deal with it, because we're gonna end up being inundated with one neighbor complaining with another neighbor off one letter, and this will be the outcome every single time. I trust our staff, and I don't think we should micromanage them.
Counselor Thompson.
I hear what you're saying, Councillor Warshagan. However, it was my request that letters directed to mayor and council be placed on an agenda so that the author of the correspondence knows that council has seen it and has been able to give direction on the response. And the reason that I have made this request is because of concerns that were expressed to me by Roxana Bolton when she was corresponding to mayor and council, albeit by email, and never received a response. So even if we advised the author that it was received for information, that person knows that council has seen it and given direction. So I would have to disagree with your comment that it doesn't belong at the table.
I think we can do it both ways. We can keep all letters in confidentiality, but yes, they should be addressed to council and mayor. Counselor Warshagan.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing that they should be responded to. I think every letter should be responded to. I just think there's certain restrictions that need to be applied in terms of somebody complaining about another person. If this individual, for whatever reason, comes back and says, you know, you put us on a public stage, in a public group, a public setting, it's a regular meeting of council, and this person took a letter that they said something untrue about me, we're putting ourselves in a position of slander because we're allowing this to be submitted in a public place, and I don't think that is fair for the individuals.
But that's where the confidentiality comes in. We don't.
But there is a name side to this, and was Mr. Kuchin, was he aware that his name would be put out there on this letter?
Mr. Kuchin is the one who wrote.
I know, but was he sending it to the city or was he sending it to the city council?
It was mayor and council.
Mayor and council. But no names of what neighbor is mentioned, so it's an ambiguity.
Okay.
Unless a direct name is named, we're not exposing 2 individuals.
No, I respect that.
So it could be many people with diesel engines and trucks on the same street.
This is very true.
Okay, so do we have a motion on that? To receive it? I think we did. We had a motion on the table. So all in favor to receive the information as presented? Carried.
Your worship, did you still want staff to write a letter to the effect of requesting that the proponent
I would like to
careful
hold
with,
counsel on that.
or your worship, we could also just put a letter just saying that council has received your your concerns for
And is
information
addressing it?
purposes. And,
Yeah.
basically it's just a confirmation that it was received. If council did not want to actually provide any, not really penalties, but like the bylaw is not saying that we have to issue a penalty or issue a verbal penalty, so to speak, so.
Sorry, Councilor.
I'm sorry, I had suggested that perhaps the offender could receive a letter from the bylaw enforcement officer in as much as he wasn't able to make contact. Having said that, and having heard what Councilor Vershegen said about the numbers of complaints, that I would withdraw that recommendation, and that Mr. Kuchen be advised that the city has received a letter for information.
Thank you, Alicia.
But having said that, if we do not address it in the form of some kind of notice to the person that's creating the noise or the idling bylaw, we really haven't addressed the letter.
But I will still continue to go around as I make my travels through various areas.
Okay, so we
I'll
can
go
give
by
him
there
the
and take-
assurance
and
that
the
we
minute I
will be
can make
looking at.
contact with him,
Okay.
I'll provide him with a copy of the bylaw.
Yeah.
With the highlighted zones in it.
Okay,
make sure
as long as we can
that
assure Mr.
situation-
Kuchen that his concerns are really
Yeah.
being addressed. Okay. All right, the next information issue is myself, Frank Conrad. It's a response to Hudson Hope Site C Dam as per council resolution December 15th, 2014. And I'd like to have council receive this for information.
Motion to receive for information.
Second, Councilor Thompson. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Councilor Vershegen.
Be quiet, please.
Motion is carried. So now we move on to Vancouver Island and Coast Conservation Society. The proclamation, a day for our common future. We received the information that the city does not issue proclamations.
I make that motion.
Councilor Thompson, seconded. Councilor Vershegen. All in favor? Discussion, sorry. Nobody ever has it. All in favor? So carried.
I'm always up for arguing over something.
You know. Oh, there we go.
Now we have Mr. Gene Coop on the Universal Water Metering Project, receiving this for information. Do I have a motion to receive this for information? Councilor Butler, do I have a second? Councilor Thompson. Discussion.
Since I made the motion, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to discuss that. In Mr. Cook's letter, the ombudsman letter seems to concur that the plumbing code does indeed require a licensed plumber to make alterations to a home's plumbing. That's what the letter stated. There's no, as far as I know, there's been no dispute to the fact that our water meters are not being installed by certified plumbers, even though many members of the public have made the city aware of the problem. I myself addressed council with this issue last summer, and I would suggest that the city needs to formally address and correct this problem.
Any other discussion? Councilor Crowe.
Yeah, looking at it, and the response from the ombudsman, and it says near the bottom, that they suggest that the BC Building Code Appeal Board would be prepared to hear the complaint. Should the complaint not be addressed, at this stage, it appears the process is not complete. So I know it's not a council of the whole where we discuss things with the the gallery, but I'm wondering, has anybody taken that to the BC Building Code Appeal Board, and what was their ruling on whether putting a water meter, splicing a line to put a water meter in is alterations to plumbing?
Councillor Butler.
I have talked with one member of the public, Mr. Mayor, that has filed a complaint with the BC Building Code, and her letter that she received back was stating that it was up to the building inspector in Grand Forks to look into that issue. And of course, her response was, well, it's the city that is proposing to put this into my house, but yet now you're asking the city to police itself. So she didn't understand the procedure. Other than that, I know that unless you've had one installed yourself, you can't actually file the complaint until you've had it installed. So if somebody doesn't want to have it installed because they want a certified plumber, they can't file a complaint until it has been installed.
Further discussion?
So could we see the motion back? Is it just received for information?
It's just for information.
Okay.
Do we want to readdress this at a later time?
Worship,
Sorry.
we have the building inspector here, and the council would like to have him speak with regard to pieces of the building code that refers to this. If it's a wish.
Mr. Cobain?
Yes, Mayor Conrad and council. The gentleman you were speaking about at the BC Board of Appeals is Zachary May. I have been in contact with him. I was in contact with him back in October of last year. His opinion was that yes, a plumber is required according to code. Although the authority having jurisdiction, which is a city, may do the installations with certified installers as opposed to an actual plumber, provided that the work is warranted and that the installer is, what did he say here? Although this does not meet the code word for word on who can do the installations, he did say that he felt the city was doing the installations in a reasonable and acceptable manner. He also stated that the code does vary from province to province, and that should be the deciding factor in the installations. It sounds as though the solution that we are using is a better solution than having the homeowner do the installation themselves, which is your other option. So he was comfortable with the fact that we were using certified installers, and upon request, we would provide a plumber to confirm that the installation was done correctly, if requested.
But that is his feeling, and what position does Mr. May hold in the BC?
He's the BC Board of Appeals. He's on the Board of Appeals.
The Board of Appeals can't make any rulings on the plumbing code.
Well, he was the one that this lady had written the letter to, and he was the name that I was given to contact.
No, the Board of Appeals is another individual's name.
So,
But the article you're reading is part of the appendix ruling on the plumbing code.
yeah, so we spoke
We're
about
using
that.
an alternate. An appendix is not a ruling, it's just an advisory note to the plumbing code. An
That's
appendix
correct.
Does not hold weight.
That is correct in that aspect. But we are the authority having jurisdiction, and at the time, the decision was made to utilize certified installers for this project.
As long as the city is acting on a supervisory role, was the city there as a supervisor, supervising the installations?
I don't know about that part because I wasn't, Roger, Houston, did you hear that comment?
Was the city present as a supervisory role for each installation?
No, they weren't. Not in every one.
So then the installations are null and void. They're illegal.
But are they?
According to the plumbing code. If you're proposing that the city would oversee it, but the city wasn't overseeing it, so then it's a cat chasing instead.
It's a really gray area, because one of the things we had talked about was the fact that water meters are not specifically mentioned in the plumbing code.
But with all due respect, when we have a gray area, do we want to be open for libel as a city?
Well, at the time, the decision was made to do that. At that time.
Councilor Thompson?
I just want to make sure that what I heard you say, Mr. Capan, is correct. That Mr. May, I believe is the gentleman's name.
Zachary May.
Zachary May has advised that water meter installations can be done by certified installers and I'm paraphrasing here, at the direction of the council. And I would have to conclude that the council at the time opted to allow the meters to be installed by certified installers. Is that kind of long and short of it?
That is, although they part of the council, I wasn't in at that meeting, so I don't know if there was a decision made by the CAO or by council at the time.
Your worship, the council at the time did the resolution to go forward with the water metering program. And through the delegation bylaw, the CAO got the program going because he has the delegation to do that. And so then the RFP was put out, and all the outlines that were put into the RFP from the city were the ones that were outlined that described how that program is going to be laid out.
Yeah, because council doesn't have the expertise or the jurisdiction to initiate a program like this, as we discussed before on different issues. Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've asked and we've given direction to the manager of operations to prepare a report on the status of the water meter installations as of December the 31st. And I would respectfully suggest that that our discussions on this particular issue would probably be more meaningful with that information. My understanding is that there is not that many left to be installed, that the majority have been. And so we're going to have a discussion and make a determination, hopefully, what this council wants to do with that issue. And, you know, I have a meter installed in my home. I'm not unhappy with it. The young man that did the installation was just a fine young gentleman, I thought. And explained things to me very clearly and concisely, and he was in and out within a half hour. And I have no issue with that personally. So I think to you know, we're going to kind of maybe going around in circles here with respect to Mr. Cook's letter, and I appreciate that he took the time to write to the ombudsman and shared their response with us. But I think until after we've had support from Mr. Houston, we're just maybe, you know, as you say, chasing our tails.
With all due respect, Councilor Thompson, you cannot impose your personal experience on this issue.
Certainly wasn't trying to impose, just stating a fact.
And contrary to that, your experiences may have been good, but on the other side of the fence, I've been receiving calls from concerned citizens, irate citizens, complaints, which now I'm advising them to put in writing and to send to the attention of staff and manager of operations, Roger.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, we are so off point on this.
Yes.
The motion is to receive a
Yes,
letter. It's not to do how your interactions were with the installer.
Correct.
Installer. The question in the letter was who undertook the installation of the water meter. Actually, did we meet the legal requirement? He says yes. You say no. We've hashed that out.
Yeah.
And I believe the motion.
Kind of gone out of left field.
I believe so.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. All right, so motion to accept?
Yep.
All in favor? Okay, we will move on to our second letter of information for receipt is the letter from Mr. Dean Coop for termination of Doug Allen. Can I have a motion to receive this for information? Councilor Thompson.
I would move that we receive the letter for information and that we endorse the response that was sent out by our acting corporate officer.
Do I have a second? Councilor Boucher. Discussion.
Quick point of order, we can't actually discuss it as it is an in-camera issue.
Yes.
That's what I was gonna say,
Yes, I
yeah.
was gonna mention that under section 90.
Yes.
So it's
So
not,
I was just, yeah, trying to stop you.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, take my foot in my
I would
mouth,
have
appreciate
I
it.
just didn't know what you meant. That's all.
all in favor to receive it.
It's not equal.
All right. Moving on to our third item of information from Mr. Dean Coop, again, regarding Emerald Developments, to receive his letter for information. Do I have a motion to receive it? Councilor Butler. Do I have a second? Councilor Rashagan. Discussion on this one.
I think we can discuss.
On a limited basis.
On a limited basis with this. A lot of it is held in camera under section 90. The part of Emerald Developments that was advertised in the paper was sent out to the public that this is the company that was proposing to buy a piece of land. In answer to Mr. Cook's letter, and myself, I'm not sure where that land sale is at right now, and I'm not sure if staff would be willing to discuss that with us at this point, but if they are, then.
Your worship, the manager of development and engineering should provide a small update with regards to what's happening as far as that.
Yes, your worship. When we advertised the property for sale, we advertised it at the same time as the contract went to our lawyers for review. So it had already gone out in the paper. It is true that they are not in existence, so we've since spoken to them and advised them of a couple options if they are still considering on purchasing the property. We've put together a new contract. It has gone to their lawyer for review, and we're just awaiting response for them, but we haven't signed anything yet.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Sorry, just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, are you saying that Emerald Developments doesn't exist and this is the company that was?
It's not registered as Emerald Developments. It used to exist, and they were dissolved in 2010, I think. So we have since told them that we cannot legally sell a piece of land to a company that does not exist.
So is this company coming back with another proposal under another name or a numbered company?
Well, we've given them some options if they still want to make the purchase.
And is there research being done though, to make sure that it's not the same individuals behind as were in Emerald? In other words, to safeguard the city.
Well, if the developer comes back wanting to purchase the property under his own name, the past council has already agreed to sell the property. If he comes under a different company that is a registered company, then.
But will there be enough research done so with all due respect, we don't fall into the same criteria that the city did
Absolutely.
selling to Emerald?
Yeah.
We don't want to make the same mistake twice, do we?
Yeah, no.
Councilor Thompson.
Just a question, in as much as the previous council agreed to sell it to Emerald Development, which is a non-existent company that was dissolved, would we not be required to re-advertise that for sale?
Yes, I will have to re-advertise that.
So the whole process will we'll go through the hoops.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So in essence, are we planning to resell the property just as a piece of land? Or are we looking for somebody entertaining the situation of putting a project on?
Well, yes, your worship, the current developer has subjects in the offer that have to be removed. If he's not able to meet the dates of the subjects and they don't get removed, it's a
Yes, I
done
realize
deal.
that.
Yeah.
But then what happens?
Then the property would just stay, either if council wanted to continue to put it up for sale or not put it up for sale. If another developer came forward, it would have to go back in camera.
And what are the timelines with his new proposal?
His subjects, I think, come off on January 9th.
So they're already off.
Oh, no, February 9th, sorry,
Well, February 9th.
February 9th.
So it looks like we got lots of time.
Yeah.
Any other discussions?
Mr. Mayor, is there an opportunity for the general public to speak now, or do we have to wait till at the end of the discussion?
Later.
Your worship, it's a question for you.
Yes, there's no, is there?
It should be.
There should be a question period at the end, yes, absolutely. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, all in favor to receive this information. So carried. All right, then we go to the bylaws section, and we will have our chief financial officer. Give us something. Let me see, excuse me, get the readings on the bylaw 2007.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, could we have a 5-minute recess prior to going into bylaws? Can I post a 5-minute recess? Yeah. last year where I was like, I got high those.
Yeah, I what you're used to.
Yeah.
Not a break to us.
Okay, now we'll proceed with the bylaws section of our agenda. We will have the chief financial officer discuss the bylaw 2007, the city of Grand Forks 2015 revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw. We are going to give it a motion to give it first 3 readings or less.
Yes, I would make that motion. I'm not sure if once it's on the table or seconded, if there would be a request to the CFO to give us more information on it. But I'll make the motion for the first 3 readings.
Yeah, I'll start with the first 3 readings as well.
Discussion.
You want?
No, I'm fine.
Councilor Shea.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just regular yearly housekeeping. It is to anticipation of revenues. It's to cover ourselves as we wait for taxes to come in. It's the normal procedure. It's nothing extraordinary. It's what we do every single year. Yeah.
Okay, so any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Manager of Development and Engineering. Motion to adopt council to receive the subdivision and development repeal bylaw 1424R and give the bylaw its final reading.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Councilor Ross, Councilor Rashagan. Any discussion?
I do have a bit of discussion on this, Mr. Mayor. This was the first time I had the opportunity to go through the bylaw. There's just a few things that I noticed, and I know council really wants to move on this. Maybe this could be brought back at a later date for some friendly amendments, but just in the table of contents under Schedule 11.
Point of order, and I
Oh,
apologize
sorry.
for interrupting. We're speaking to the repeal bylaw.
Oh,
the new one
okay,
coming in.
sorry.
Just a repeal bylaw.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what it says at this point. It's
I'll put
repealed.
the hand up behind the screen.
Excuse me, your worship, can you please repeat who moved and seconded that motion?
It was Councilor Ross and Councilor Rashagan seconded.
Thank you.
So, all in favor? So carried. Now, we're gonna move on to the Manager of Development Engineering for the actual subdivision development and servicing bylaw number 1970. And we are asking council to put a motion forward to give a final reading. Councilor Rashagan, Councilor Thompson, second. Discussion.
Now,
Councilor
go
Thompson.
ahead. In the table of contents, Mr. Mayor, after Schedule 11, there were 2 sections at the end of the bylaw, subdivision approval manual and works and services agreement. I'm just wondering if that should also be included in the table of contents. And also the same amendment to include those under section 2.5. Section 4.4, I was just wondering if that could include an amendment for off-grid systems, if there were people in our city that chose to want to have an off-grid system, if that was possible. Section 8, I have a desire to clarify this section to protect the personal property rights and privacy of residents. It's a common clause in bylaws and in the community charter, but I believe it could be misused. I'd like to clarify what is meant by reasonable times to enter into someone's home. Also, the penalty for breaking this bylaw is again $10,000 per day with no warning given out to residents. And since it is such a massive bylaw and most people haven't had the chance to read it, I'm concerned on this this amount of penalty for an individual. And also for a corporation, I mean, $10,000 isn't really a deterrent if they're going to misuse the bylaw. So I just would like to see maybe an individual warning going out to residents before fines are imposed, like the one that's mentioned in section 11E of the Building and Plumbing Amendment bylaw that we already have in place in Grand Forks. And it states that direct written notice or by attaching a placard to the premises, the correction of any condition or in the opinion of the authority having jurisdiction, such condition contravenes the provisions of this bylaw, order the cessation of work that is proceeding in contravention of this bylaw. So I just like that to be clarified somehow. Section A, or Schedule A, sorry, states that all commercial and residential buildings must be only connected to the city sewer and water, yet the industry is allowed to have their own wells and septic. My concern in that is twofold. I'm just wondering if the industry is permitted to withdraw free water while residents have no option to do so. And also, since industry sewer rates are directly tied to their metered water intake, if their sewer bills are artificially low because they're drawing water from wells. Also in Schedule A, I'd like to see incentives or stronger language for green infrastructure. For example, there are many amazing designs being used in other parts of the country for the use of stormwater. Could cisterns be required as storage for irrigation purposes? Schedule 2, there's a typo where one section is repeated on the next page that was on the initial page. Schedule 4, also with regards to specifications for the sewer lift station set out in Part 33. I'm wondering if our lift station is compliant with Section 33, if it needs to be fenced in like it's stated in that section. In the approval manual subdivision at the end, it says that we're able to, I'm just wondering if we're able to waive the cash in lieu for parkland requirement. I know that's stated in other legislation that companies are allowed to do that. I just like to see subdivisions include green space that's useful land. Right now, a developer can pay his way out of this requirement. And in step 6 of that same section, I'd like to see stronger language on what is laid out in Section 86 of the Land Title Act. There's no obligation to consult the public or surrounding landowners before putting in a new subdivision. And I think most of us would like to have input if a new development is going in on our streets. So, Mr. Mayor, because this is the first time that I've had the chance to read this bylaw and because of the reasons stated, I would like to see more revision from staff if it can come back after it's passed for an amendment. I just think it's important that council take the lead in setting policy and bylaws so that our citizens feel that they're properly represented and have confidence that council is doing due diligence with reading these bylaws.
Councillor Verschagen, could I have a comment from staff or manager of engineering on that subject? That's been discussed. Do you have a comment on that?
What would you like?
There's a few.
It's
It's a learning bylaw.
Yeah, because of course.
What's
we're
our
not
best
gonna-
procedure?
I don't know, your worship, but what would you like staff to clarify?
Could I make a recommendation?
Councillor,
I'm on the floor
Oh,
before you.
sorry.
Councillor Verschagen was first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for curiosity, at the last meeting, was third reading given to this bylaw?
Mm-hmm.
And you voted in favor of it at that
No.
point?
No.
You were opposed to
No,
it?
Mr. Mayor, at that point, I voted against it just because council hadn't had the chance to read it at that point. It hadn't been delivered to us until that morning of the meeting, so I hadn't had a chance to go through it yet.
Fair enough.
Councillor Thompson.
Through you to Councillor Butler, have your comments, could they be forwarded to the manager of,
Development engineer.
thank you. So that perhaps she could respond to that at the next committee of the whole meeting or in February?
Yeah, that was my question too.
But point of order, as this, as it sits, this document, this bylaw is sitting on the floor at final reading as is.
Yeah.
But we're discussing issues and hypotheticals and amendments that aren't included as of now in this document.
No, but she's asking that they be included at a later time.
And somebody would have to make a
You make
motion
a
for us to talk
motion
about
to
it.
Yeah, I want to make a motion.
We have a motion on the floor to adopt it, do we not?
As it is.
It's adopted.
Okay, I guess I need to amend that motion then, is what you're asking for.
With all the amendments that you suggested.
Right, well, I know that council wants to move on this now, and I'm pretty sure it's the desire of most people on council here to push this through at fourth reading. There was discussion earlier that we could bring this back for some housekeeping later on, just to get the bylaw in place so that staff has something to work with, and I'd be okay with that. So I could definitely send these notes as they're written.
Your worship, as Councilor Butler had said, if council adopted the bylaw tonight, all the suggestions that Councilor Butler has could be forwarded, and staff at a later date could review it and do some housekeeping items on it. However, it wouldn't happen as soon as the next committee of the whole. It would be down at the later date, with time requirements and everything, because there is a lot of research that needs to be done on that.
But it would be addressed with due diligence.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Sure. Any other questions or concerns? So, Councilor
So
Butler.
I guess I'd just like to make a motion then to make that amendment that staff take a look at these recommendations and bring back a report at a later date at their convenience.
Yeah, we have to do the first.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So on the motion that's on the floor, do we have all in favor? So carried. Councilor Butler.
Okay, then, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council directs staff to receive the notes that I've written for information and respond to them at their convenience and bring it back at a later date to council for some housekeeping amendments.
Second.
So do I have a second, Councilor Crog? All in favor? So carried. Now, manager of operations. Deal with the electric utility regulatory repeal bylaw, and then if we adopt a motion to give it its third reading. Councilor Ross, Councilor Rashagan, second. Discussion. All in favor? So carried. And now we will deal with the actual bylaw. The electric utility regulatory bylaw 1975, 2014 for its third reading. Do I have a motion? Councilor Butler, seconded, Councilor Rashagan. Do we have a discussion on this? Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking to the motion, I would like to propose two amendments to the bylaw. The first motion I propose that a section 4.6 be added to Schedule C to include an opt-out clause for radio read meters, similar to the bylaw in Nelson and the recommendation of our electrical consulting engineer. It would read as follows. An optional service is offered to those customers who prefer not to have a radio read meter at their service entrance. A non-radio read meter will be installed as an alternate to the standard digital radio read meter. The customer would be required to pay a one-time setup charge. For each billing cycle thereafter, the customer will be required to pay a manual read charge along with the regular residential service rates applicable under this bylaw. If the customer qualifies for the equal payment plan under Schedule D, Section 1.6, the manual read charge may be waived. This service may be discontinued if it is not compatible with the technology, practices, procedures, or capacity of the electrical utility. The rate for setup charge, $158.01 per meter, and the manual read charge, $14.53 per billing cycle.
Are you referring to it as a one-time fee then?
Mr. Mayor, the electrical engineer has suggested that we have a setup charge, a one-time fee of $158 per meter, and then the manual read charge is every 2 months unless they qualify for the equal payments plan.
Then it would be a one-time.
Right.
But what are we going to second on the amendment before?
Yes, on the first, we have a motion on the table.
I'll second.
But on the first motion
Diane.
of the third reading, sorry.
Your worship, the amount of the rates that Councilor Butler was referring to is supposed to be presented in the electrical rates bylaw, not the recognition one. So this part here is going to be the one that's going to be introduced to council on the January 26th committee of the whole, where that opt-out section would be put in council's consideration.
So before we consider the amendment, we have to vote on the first motion.
No, we vote on the amendment,
Okay.
and in this regard, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we defeat it so we can go back to the original main motion. A question
Or
on the amendment that allows the rate. structure and not change this bylaw as suggested by the CAO.
Unless Councillor Butler wants to withdraw it.
Councillor Butler.
I think it would be possible just to amend the motion not to include the bottom section that has the rates attached to it, to include the opt-out, but not the rates for it. Is that what you were saying?
Perhaps, your worship, Mr. Love could, elaborate on that?
I think you probably want to keep the manual read option, the whole thing, in the rate bylaw, because it's a rate that's available to customers to choose or not, rather than as part of the electrical bylaw. So I would say that that doesn't belong in this bylaw. It belongs in the rate bylaw that's coming to you on the 26th, I think it is.
The introduction.
Yes.
Okay.
Withdraw your motion.
So I guess I'll withdraw my motion from the table then until the rates bylaw comes out.
Okay.
I did have a second motion. I believe this does go in here because we talked about this one last time as well. Let me read it here. It's in regards to Schedule B, in agreement with the two letters that we received from the public and further correspondence that I've had with one of the individuals. I'd like it to be clarified that the City of Grand Forks may allow commercial photovoltaic services. I suggest that the title of section 11 read photovoltaic services as opposed to residential photovoltaic services. Further, that the first sentence of section 11.3 be amended to read independent power producers, IPP projects, and commercial projects not covered in section 11.1 require special considerations. I know that's the end of the amendment, but I just know in talking with Roxana Bolton and her with dealing with the photovoltaic services with the city, she felt that it really needed to be clarified so that people down the road that read this bylaw that might not have been privy to comments from this council would not be confused when they read it, and that they would know that commercial customers do have the option of joining with the city.
Do we have a seconder on that? Because again, you're speaking to the motion first.
Do we have a second? Councillor Thompson. Okay. Councillor Rashay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this in line with what is capable of the city? In your opinion, what the amendment is?
So as I understand the amendment, it would amend the title of section 11 from residential photovoltaic services to just photovoltaic. And in 11.3, it would add the words and I would suggest maybe using or commercial. And I think that would be fine because 11.1 and 11.2 are each clear that they apply to residential services. So I think, I'm not sure how you handle that from the process point of view, but from an effect in the bylaw, I think that would be fine.
Any other concerns or questions? Councillor Crowe.
Actually, now I'll save it for the rate bylaw.
Any other questions, discussions? So, all in favor?
Of the amendment.
Amendment, yes, motion. So carried.
And then we have to vote on the main
The
motion.
main motion,
Yeah.
exactly, so.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended, so all in favor? So carried.
As amended? Yeah, as amended.
As,
As amended.
okay.
Okay, Mayor.
So, there's no late items.
Questions?
So now we have questions from the public and the media.
I just wanted to confirm.
You identify yourself, please.
Oh, Craig Lindsay with the Grand Forks Gazette. I wanted to confirm who voted for the, I think Christine Thompson, who brought up the water meter, asking Roger for a status report. And I think it was all in favor except for Michael Orshag. Is that correct?
On the water meter?
Yeah, well, the reporter was.
No, the only motion that Councillor Thompson brought up that I voted against was her, the one to do with her council reports, nothing to do with water meters. The only thing to do with water meters had to do with Jean Cook's.
Yes, it was only received for information.
Which was received for information, I wouldn't have favored that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Glad you asked.
Thank you.
My name is Murray Rennie. I have a question with regards to the charge that was quoted for reading electric meters.
Your question?
The street that I live on, there's 11 houses that Fortis check manually. And it takes him at the most 20 minutes. That is over $450 an hour at $14 and some cents. Now, is that to compensate and add to the revenue of the city, or just to recover the cost of reading the meters?
Is that on your street?
Yes.
That Fortis Street on your street?
They read the water, the gas meters.
Oh, the gas meters.
And it's done manually, and it takes them probably less than 20 minutes.
Okay.
So at $14 and some cents an hour, that's over $450 in an hour.
So you're doing a comparative, the gas meter reading?
That's right, it shouldn't take any long.
Councillor Thompson?
No, go ahead. Oh, okay. I totally agree with you. When I made up this motion, it was on the recommendations of the rates set by our electrical engineer. And I wanted to present a motion that would be palatable to council. If it were council's wish to remove that rate charge, I'd be all for it. But of course, we don't want to infer any charges, any extra charges on the rest of the residential customers, right? So we want to make sure that if people choose an opt-out, that it's not going to have costs that that trickle down into the rest of the residents.
Well, I don't mind paying the recovery cost of what it, but $450 an hour is a little excessive as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you.
Yes. Councillor Rasheed?
Nothing to add to that.
Councillor Crog?
I'm gonna say this will last this time. No, it's not good. Okay. So,
You'll have to speak on it.
anyways, I don't think that we can honestly compare that to look at, this is how long it takes them to do 11 houses on A Street. I know that they come and they do my house and they've got to go all the way around. And it takes them probably longer than my neighbors, but we don't know what else goes into Fortis's program to read it. Are they depreciating the vehicle? Is it the equipment that goes along with it? So I don't think it's fair to just say, this is what I see, and this, if it only takes an hour, then that's $450 an hour, because I don't know what goes in. But I do know one thing about manual reading, especially when it comes to electrical, because there are residents in the city that are provided power by Fortis. And they manually read my meter, and I got a power bill for, I think it was about $1,700. When I complained or asked why, because mine's normally around $500 or $500 to $700 for my power. They came out and reread the meter and said, oh, yeah, they read it wrong. So I'm waiting to get a smart meter put on my house, so I don't have to go through that type of crap again.
But I can see Mr. Murray's concept.
Oh,
This is where the equal payment option avoids all that.
Yeah, it would just be one time.
Yeah. Councillor Thompson?
My only comment, and I appreciate what you said, is that electrical meters that are going to be manually read are not going to be all contiguous. They're going to be in different areas of the city, and there are costs associated with that. The employee's time, the operating cost of the vehicle to get there, and any, those kinds of costs. And I think that is what is reflective in the proposed rate of $14 and change.
And does Fortis Gas have an equal payment option?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know, I don't have one.
So then I would suggest those clients go on an equal payment.
Okay, no, they still read it.
Most
Yeah,
water
but they only
meters
read it once.
are in a much more convenient spot than what most gas meters are.
But the concept is the same. If they get an equal payment, it's a one-time reading. So there goes the 400 and.
Yeah, I think CAO would like to say something, and then question.
Your worship, the chief financial officer would like to make a comment with regard to this.
Please.
We haven't really discussed, finance hasn't really discussed the equal payment plan and the electrical and the implications of billing or doing a reading once a year. The equal payment plan at the beginning of the year, we look in January and we look at the previous usage and we estimate what the usage will be for the year. So if we set somebody's payments up based on their past usage for $100 a month, we do a read in December, and they actually used $2,000 a month. At that reading, they would have approximately $10,000 due within 30 days, and then penalties and interest would start. So I really think we need to look at the risk of reading it once a year. The estimates could be off, consumption could be different, and there could be a big difference there between the read and the estimates. So,
But would the readings be that different? Because if we can project a financial plan for the city of Grand Forks for 5 years, we're not reinventing the wheel. The equal payment system has been in place for years and years in many provinces.
and each year there's ones that are on the average, that are close to the estimate, and there's ones that are way off.
Well, nothing is foolproof, of course.
Nope, but that is a risk, just so that the customers, I think, will need to be aware of that also, that they do have a risk of getting a huge bill.
Yeah, it'll be at the customer's discretion if they choose so. I mean, the warnings can be put out there.
Yeah,
So if
as long
they
as they're
choose,
aware of
yes.
that risk.
Yeah, I mean, there's gotta be options. That's what we're discussing. Counselor Thompson?
Yes, Fortis reads my gas meter every month. And the bill I get, because I'm on their equal payment plan, as does the city's electrical bill every 2 months, it reflects what I've actually used, what I've actually paid towards that, and any residual that's there that has to be cleared up by, well, for the city, it's by the end of the year. So, you know, it's not just a one-shot deal, one read deal where you're, you know, and hearing what the CFO has to say, I mean, that's a pretty risk for a customer to only have it read once a year.
I appreciate your efforts in responding to the discussion from the last council meeting. Getting back to Cole, we knew that RF was classified.
Excuse me, for the record, could you identify yourself?
Okay, Don DeSemno.
Thank you.
Welcome. So the RF is classified as a possible carcinogen, and we were talking about people not being cornered into having that in their home, but having a choice. And I hear that you guys are trying to figure out how to do that. Is it possible to explore possibilities of taking a photograph of the meter, then bringing it in, or doing a telephone, sending it in, and then having also the official read once a year? So trying to think, can we meet the goals where the city doesn't have to pay for them opting out, but that they don't get exposed to something if they have a concern about that we're not cornering them?
My only answer to that would be, how viable would a photograph be? How sustainable could it be for the city as far as being legitimate if you're taking photographs of your meter? That would be the only concern.
Well, they have an ID on them. Each one, I think, has its own ID number. I don't know if there would be a way to do the date, but.
Would there not be more processing possibly for the city?
The usefulness of that may not be necessarily to pay per month, but if they notice the consumption went up, it wouldn't be such a shock at the end of the year if they're on the equal payment plan, because we'd have an idea of how they were doing it, even if they had the equal payment plan. But there is another question also for the people who aren't eligible for the equal payment plan. We haven't addressed that one.
Well, there's another suggestion then, that everybody doesn't have to, if I'm wrong, can I address this to staff? Does it have to be an annual? It could be a semi-annual. quarterly. So $14 or whatever it may be in 2015 is not an exuberant cost compared to the possible expenses on the city's behalf if we have to process, analyze photographs. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know what staff feels about that. Councillor Crowder.
Not even close to the topic that you guys are talking about, but
Yes.
a member of the gallery last did
Yes.
have his hand up for a question.
My apologies. Go ahead.
Michael.
I just, two anecdotes and one comment on his thing about reading the meters. I've lived in two houses in this town. Electrical, right now we're on Fortis, and our gas is on Fortis, and my first house I was on in the city. And yeah, I had the nice digital meter from the city, and I had occasion to come into the city with my bill and just laugh out loud because it was extraordinary. I don't have a welding shop, but I could have had three. And it was a mistake. It was a reading mistake. The first year we moved into our house, there was a problem with the furnace. Our eco payments planned the next year was sky high because of that 3-month period. As far as reading the meters, 11 houses quickly, well, that's fine. They're all in a row. I used to deliver papers, and when they're all in a row and they're easy, they're quick. But when there's some, like you said, around the back, or you have dogs, if you come on the property when they've got pit bulls, you have to make appointments for that type of thing. And I know that an awful lot of the people who voiced opinions about the water meters have privacy issues. And I can imagine a certain number of those people wouldn't want anybody, meter reader, coming on their property unless they called ahead of time and okayed it. So these are all things that just add to the amount of time. I'm just pointing that out. It's, you know, one anecdote, that's good, but most places, like you said, all over the place, different ideas, different rules. It's not going to be that simple. That's all.
You didn't identify yourself, but we know who you are.
Les Johnson.
Thank you.
My name is Gene Cook. In regard to the water meter issue that has been discussed, as far as the information goes, the city bylaw stated that journeyman plumbers were to be used. The BC Plumbing Code states that either a journeyman plumber, an accredited apprentice, or the homeowner can install the meter. So my point being that if the city by a private council chose to ignore their own bylaw, why should anybody in the city respect any bylaw that the city has taught? If the meters were not installed by journeyman plumbers or accredited apprentices, then the bylaw is moot. So my point is that perhaps as an offering on that aspect of it, an ad could be run in the paper for a given period of time where people have an opportunity to have their meter inspected. If in fact they wanted the meter, and somebody from the city, ultimately a journeyman plumber or an accredited apprentice, would have to come in and check that meter installation to see if it is good. The other problem that came up with the meters, and I had a woman about 3 days ago, her name is Mary, she's about 80, mid-late 80s. These older folks were terrified by the draconian methods used by the prior council to install the meters. And she said to me, I had a meter put in because when they told me I had 2 weeks to have it done and the fines were $1,000 a day, it just terrified me. So I'm not surprised you have not had much response from any aspect of any individuals per se, simply because they don't want anything, they're deathly afraid of the city. That they've been treated in a manner that literally scared the hell out of them. And they're really gun shy. They are so suspicious. I said to her, what you have to do is write a letter to mayor and council explaining your predicament. And she also said, I never wanted the meter. I have no use for that meter. I don't want it in my house. But what am I going to do? And I said, write a letter to the mayor and council explaining your circumstance and see what can be done to remedy the situation. I don't know how many are out there like her, but I do know people that are of a retired age in their 80s and some in their 90s. a lady like that has never written a letter of complaint to anyone, ever. She just wants to live in peace and know she can survive without the threats of $1,000 fines coming onto her. So in response to your mentioning of how it worked out well for you, that's terrific, but there are, how you identify that hidden amount of people that are in that category, I don't know. And I do know in one of my own personal circumstances, one of my rentals, I have notified Neptune within their time frame that I was not available to have them come in to install a meter until a given period of time. They went to see my tenant without my permission or knowledge. It was about a Thursday. They told the tenant they were going to be there on Wednesday to install the meter. Just by happenstance, I ran into him and he told me about it. And I said, you call Neptune back and tell them there's no meter going in unless they come and talk to the homeowner, not me. And he said, yeah, that's what I thought. But had I not done that, and I can provide you with the name of the tenant, I can provide the evidence to back that up. Had I not, by happenstance, ran into them, they could well have come into the home and installed the meter without my permission. You know, the subterfuge of all these different people that have been treated or mistreated badly from a disrespectful perspective right from the get-go, along with the fact that the city never adhered to their own bylaw, it says to me there's still a lot of very unhappy people out there. They may be a silent majority, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. Having said that, something to remedy that circumstance, to offer those who did not want a meter the opportunity to have the meter removed and or not be billed by a meter should be a part of your discussion when you talk about this on January 26th. So if I may just finish from that perspective, I'm just sitting here listening. I'm really encouraged by the fact you are also concerned. You're willing to listen to what the people are asking, and I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate what you said, where your real focus is transparency and honesty and clarity on what's being done. So I really look forward to all of you as a new group producing those results. This idea of transparency, which in turn provides democracy and ultimately provides freedom, has still got to be the basis of our fundamental right in this country. And anything that detracts from that, anything that takes away from that, we don't need communism for the poor and democracy for the rich. And that's in essence the treatment we've had over the last time has been a disheartening and sad experience. So I look forward to all of you and your listening ability.
To address your concerns to the best of my ability as mayor, the only thing I can say is I cannot comment on previous council and mayor's actions, nor can I or will we try to correct that. We have to move on. We can't deal with the past. We have to move forward. And we are doing our best to address these issues.
So the water meter issue, there may be things that can still be done about that to give people a fair and honest treatment. And on the issue of the property that was for sale to Emerald Developments, it was a very simple corporate search that provided the information that I got that said this is a non-existent company. They went out of business in 2010. And so far as I could read out of the documentation, they had 4 lawsuits against them at that time. And the alarm bells went up in my mind with 2 things. One, where and why was due diligence not done by those responsible to check this out? And you've alluded to that in your comments to Sasha, and that's good, and that'll be fixed. But if I had not done that due diligence, then where would the city have been with that, right? And I shouldn't have to do the due diligence for the city. That was public notices that went out into the paper that should have been correct. And so I am concerned about where the responsibility lies, and that responsibility needs to be addressed to whomever it came from.
Again, with all due respect, that was then, now it's. And we are looking at the issues.
I also suggest that you might want to write a letter of retraction in response to those two public or more than two public notices that were in the paper. And perhaps an apology to the people of the town that these public notices were put out in error. And third item was on the contract for Mr. Allen. And I received a letter from Sarah that talked about due to section 90, that could not be revealed. So I look forward to hearing your response on that the letter I wrote, as we can address that issue. I am concerned about this veil of secrecy that keeps the financial aspect of the city dollars, the tax dollars we pay, out separate from the people. That the people don't have a chance to know how and when their tax dollars have been paid. In the case of Mr. Allen, reading through what I got from the Freedom of Information on his contract, the settlement charges that have possibly been paid are monstrous, with no recognition given to what the public who pays for this have a right, I believe, to know.
With all due respect, because you're lacking that information, it is all speculative on your part. That is monstrous. It's not a fair
I
statement.
don't know what the final outcome of it is, yes, but I do know what the contract.
But the city is not the only one that run under section 9. Corporations do it. Unfortunately, it's a concept that's out there. Probably will never change.
So my question
It
is,
is protection for.
what can be done to lift and or remove this veil of secrecy that hides the financial aspect of what taxpayers pay, whether they're taxpayers of this town or taxpayers from that work on the Alberta tar sands or wherever the tax dollars come from through grants or otherwise. What can be done to improve and lift that veil of secrecy that hides the very financial aspect of what we're all really concerned about and what we should be working towards from the public? And maybe that's something you folks can look into.
To give you an honest answer on that one, probably nothing.
Your worship, may I just comment on that particular issue? Mr. Cook, the financial statements, the audited financial statements that will be coming out, there is a statement within those documents that will detail the amount, not specifically what it was all entailed, but the actual amount that.
I know, I realize that.
Yeah.
They don't come out till June or July, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But that information will come out at that time.
And the last issue is I noticed from those very financial statements you mentioned, which I got a copy of, there was an increase of employment from 32 employees to 42 employees between 2012 and 2013. And I would like to know, as a taxpayer, why an extra 10 people were hired? And what was involved in that? You know, are there some people retiring and some people have to be replaced, so there's an overlap? But that kind of information, to me, again, is financial and should be reported to the public.
I think the easy answer to that would be seasonal employees, summer students. In the past, we cut back on the number of seasonal employees in the winter and the summer to do different services, and they, regardless of status, if they're a half-time employee, 2 half-time employees showed up as 1 full-time employee. It's just the way it works. And often those employments were offset by grants, and I'm sure the staff member could.
Your worship, that would likely also indicate the casuals that we have.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a number of casuals that help out at the works yard. And they could be on, there's somebody that's due to illness, and we have the same thing with our administrative. We have casuals that come in periodically when there's somebody that's on sick leave or different incidentals. And so that may show what the different number is going to be, and it's part of the succession planning. And if there is some emergency, then we have some backup in place.
So I'll do this.
But there hasn't been in the financial statement that shows 10 extra people were hired. Perhaps an extended breakdown could be given as to why they were hired.
I can't comment on that. Those are audited financial statements done specifically to local government.
So that's it. Thank you very much.
Les was first.
Actually,
Les was, I think, first.
Yeah. Well,
You had votes.
There's lots of things I could say, but I don't want to go after somebody else who's participating here. And I'm not going to tell you how to micromanage your business. But what I did have to say is that I would hope that the discussions like I heard earlier on about whether or not the installers were legally allowed to be in there or not, I'd rather that those kinds of discussions didn't happen so freely and openly in the public forum. And the only reason is that as I sat there, I'm thinking, well, gee, you have now given ammunition to possibly hundreds of people to sue the city. And as a financial burden on its taxpayers, that scares me far more than almost anything else I heard in this meeting. That bothers me. Because by your words, you've essentially said, well, no, they weren't legal. It wasn't legal. Ipso facto, if I was a lawyer, I'd be, oh boy, let's see how many people are going to be calling me up this week, next week, etc. So if there's any way to have that discussion, you should have that discussion. Don't get me wrong. If it was wrong, it should be remediated. But talking that way in open discussion like this just leaves the door open to, I don't know how many potential lawsuits and how big each one could be, but that's the way that the lawsuit world works. That's just my advice.
In addressing that question or that response, I think the issues, or as we call it, the elephant in the room, has already been out there much longer prior to this. Unless I'm totally wrong, and we'd have to check the tapes, I do not think the word illegal was used in the conversation. So that's a big word.
I understand.
That wasn't used. And as far as discussing it in public, there comes the transparency issue. If we start hiding everything again, then we go again, according to Mr. Cook, where everything is kept in secret. Which way are we better off? Sure, we cannot defame individuals, and we can also not point fingers of who's at fault, but we're looking at the general perspective of a plumbing code and working within those parameters. I think whatever interpretation the public uses, I don't think there'll be a basis for a lawsuit.
Well, what I'm just saying is that if you could invite somebody from the ministry down here to clarify everything so that there's not so much freeform discussion in front of the public and the cameras, so that people don't get the impression, or you don't, like when you say these things as a member of the public, it's one thing, but now you're sitting in the mayor's position. And when you say these things as the mayor, they have implications.
Well, we're not implementing anything. We are just, as you use the word, discussing. So what interpretation you take of that, or anybody takes of that, is at their own discretion. It does not deem, and I don't think it would deem in any court of law, a potential for a lawsuit against the city. Under no means. We're not directing our discussions at any particular individuals or companies. We're just having a broad spectrum
No, you're
conversation.
leaving the city open to people who didn't want the water meters in the first place to come back on the city and say, take them out, I'm gonna sue you. That's all I'm saying. I'm not wanting to get into an argument.
That again, in the discussion, is your interpretation.
Okay.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Nigel James. I am a resident and a property owner in Grand Forks. I suggested that was a way of introduction for the council to make sure that people who perhaps had no dealings with the corporation or the city, that you could tend to either ignore their comments or read them out. That way, sort of, you maybe concentrate on who's likely to make comments, etc., and that is relevant to your proposals and your projects. I'm not going to raise any specific items at all. It's just general comments basically, but I might ask for specific figures and data which would be hopefully provided at a later date. You can't provide it right now, I'm quite sure. But what my advice is, this is from the last edition of the Advertiser. Regular flights from Trail to Kelowna take off next week. The first flight took off today. It's a regular scheduled process. Unfortunately, the background, I don't know the full details, but 20 odd years ago, the council in Grand Forks, they decided that they didn't wish the Grand Forks Airport to be the regional hub. And this was, I believe, from probably the time of Mayor Eddie Mojo when he was in the Here we've got a situation where Castlegar has now got the job. And here are scheduled flights happening on a regular basis. If the concept had been initially accepted back in 20 odd years ago, think of what the difference to Grand Forks it would be. We wouldn't have had in the last census where we had a loss of 60 odd people in the population, and the census before another 60 loss. Grand Forks is slowly dying unless we do something about it. But I would suggest that for the council, that they are very wary about what they suggest and what they pass, because it might have long-term effects in 5, 10, and 50 years' time. Another item I raised with the previous council was I have got 6 councillors. And if I want to speak with any of them, I don't know which one to contact on which topic. And I suggested to the council that each councillor had various topics, could be perhaps such as library, environment, sport, the GFI, finance and community and Chamber of Commerce and things like that. And they were listed and published so that people could know who to contact. And it would concentrate the mind. It's just a suggestion. Water metering has come up, and I'm not going to discuss that except for the fact that I volunteered to be on the committee who looked at the proposed, perhaps, rates of the water. And the intention had been that we would meet, probably there were about 10 or 12 or 15 or so people. And we would be meeting in December and so on in order to suggest to the council what the decent rates would be. I have heard nothing. There might be a good reason why not. I have heard, or the reason why I have heard nothing. However, it is rather inconsiderate, and I think rather ungrateful of the city to not accept, to not acknowledge those volunteers, and to say, sorry, we're not going to do it for the time being because of what. A letter would have been most appropriate, I believe. We come to benefits, and on page 5, the Chief Financial Officer was asked for information, and in respect, she gave that information. The sort of information I would have hoped she would produce would be detailed information, not just general broad brush stuff. And this topic was introduced at that special meeting. The special meeting was talked about the Deer Committee. But then you introduced, Your Worship, a late item, which was the furniture in the chamber, in the chamber. All of a sudden, another item was added on, and I did note that all 6 councillors were there, and there were just 2 members of the city staff were recorded. I wonder also, the gallery was mentioned, and I wonder how many people attended as the gallery, because it was at just gone 11 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, not the sort of time I would expect for people to show up. I wonder why it was raised as a matter of an agenda when it wasn't on the agenda at all. I wonder if you could explain that, please.
With all due respect, what is the question? Is there a question?
The question is, why was the benefit package for the council raised on the agenda, raised as an ad hoc situation on the agenda on Tuesday, the 12th, whatever it was, on that special meeting?
Councillor O'Shea.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. I asked you the question. I don't wish to hear it back from one of the.
Well, initially, the special meeting was not called for that purpose.
Indeed not.
Pardon me?
Indeed, it was not.
It was not. Exactly so, but the conversation came up because the benefits package had been discussed prior to this.
Had that been discussed publicly, please?
Mr. Mayor, if I may say something to this regard, this package has been in place through the whole past council. It's a non-new item. We've been under it before. This is not something that just sort of showed up.
This is not something new.
This was in place last year, the year before, this is nothing new.
I was gonna get to that.
It's
This is
all
not
been in the
something
annual,
new that's been
it's been
introduced.
in the annual report each and every year.
We're not reinventing the wheel.
All right. I move on from that, but one of the questions I do have is, how did it, shall we say, suddenly become to be discussed as a member as a topic, when in fact it didn't appear as an agenda item?
But again, with all due respect, it was not an in-camera, it was nothing of that nature. So the public it was posted, so the public were able to
No,
attend.
it was, sorry, Your Worship, with respect, it was published that there was going to be a meeting about the Deer Committee and getting Councillor Hammett to go to Richmond. Then you introduced a late item about the furniture.
Yeah,
There was nothing written down to anybody about the fact that the potential of social benefits to the councillors was ever going to be raised.
Again, with all due respect, if you are aware of the concept of meetings, the agenda items can be added or amended.
But it was added under a late item, and in fact, it wasn't a late item. It should be entered under a separate heading on the minutes.
Just check the staff, Sarah.
Your Worship,
Yes.
it's council's prerogative to add to the amended agenda, and the place to put
Yes.
it is as a late
Is that
item.
a late item? Exactly, that is
And
what I want the
so-
clarification.
And actually, the actual resolution was to direct staff to put a report forward, so it was not actually a decision to go forward with benefits, and that's why it was presented to council.
The addition was put at the beginning, but added as a late item.
I'll accept it as a late item then.
My other concern back is you keep talking about the council furniture. Was there a question in there?
No, nothing at all.
Only because you kept.
It was
bringing
just
up.
your late item that you had added in.
And if I may clarify, the reason was,
Doesn't matter.
the decision was, well, I must explain, the decision was because we were able to reuse our old furniture.
Good, saves some money.
Exactly.
But however, my question was about shall I say, the social benefits that are potentially there. Because what I would like to know is what actual dollar figure is going to be if the councillors are accepted and take it on. And that can be done, obviously produced at a later.
Yes, it's not finalized yet.
The other thing is, I understand it as well, it's usually, these benefit packages usually go for fully employed people and not volunteers and the like. I'm not sure if I'm correct on that, but the implication is that the people have a regular job and they report to somebody on what their work is.
Okay.
That would indicate to me that yes, they are fully employed and so on, and therefore they could be entitled to benefit packages.
Okay. So with all due respect, are you considering us as volunteers?
You are volunteers because you put your name forward for election. Admittedly, you get a stipend or a wage or a salary or whatever it is, I don't know, and I haven't found out. However, and I know that you work very hard, but not all of you work very hard. I have facts and figures to know that some of you don't work so hard, and I can produce those figures from the minutes of all the meetings. Statistics is one of my enjoyments, actually.
But to reiterate back again, we're not inventing the wheel. These packages have been in place.
I haven't
So
realized.
have you brought this up in previous council?
No, I have not, because I
Or
didn't
previous.
realize it. But also to counter yours, the idea of water meters has been on the agenda for the last 10 or more years anyway. So, it wasn't anything new. However, the last point on benefits I have is that I believe that the fire and rescue department are now entitled to get benefits and so on. And I would like to know how much money it costs the city for those benefits to be given to those volunteers, because they are volunteers. Admittedly, they have to attend certain times of training and and it is a cork out. But I'd like to know what those figures are, please.
With all due respect, we must direct that to staff.
Yes, indeed, and indeed, thank you. I mean, I trust somebody is taking minutes on this.
Absolutely.
Your Worship,
Councillor Thompson.
I would just like to comment, Mr. James, the benefit package, it's offered through UBCM. And there has to be at least 3 members of council that want to avail themselves of those benefits, so.
Okay,
And
that will come out in the written reply that I get to my question, I'm quite sure. Thank you.
just so you're aware.
The final comment I really have is about,
Your worship, just a quick note that as far as doing a calculation, we won't know the exact calculation until we find out what the benefits are for each member of council. But looking at the past one, we're basically calculating it's going to be about $20,000 per annum.
ballpark figures is good enough to keep the transparency going so that we know where our money's going. That's, I don't need to know dollar and cents, but roughly 10,000.
That's just like the hydro meters.
15,000, whatever else, yes. That does, and in fact, as an aside, those sort of things, I would believe that they're the sort of things that people should take up with the individual deliverer of the service and on a private basis, and not waste your time talking about this and everybody else's time at this sort of meeting. But that's my opinion. The last one is about the fire truck. One of my bête noirs, really. The last council brought it in. Again, the fire truck has been on the agenda for a long, long time. And the problem is, as I see it, it's going to cost us, the corporation of the city, about $1.3 million. And that was the original budget. About the same amount of money would the gas tax provided for the water meters. But that, we're not paying for that. What it means is that basically I'm working on the principle of about 2,500 ratepayers, shall we call them, businesses and houses, which works out at $520 for each ratepayer on average, roughly. There is something that has happened, of course, which is beyond anybody's control here, and that's the rate of exchange. It has now increased by, well, from what it was out, it's gone up by about 11%. And I wonder if the contract is a fixed contract for cash, or is it at US dollars on the date of delivery? I believe that and the other thing about the truck is, the fire truck, it's been sold on being a platform truck, and that you could even lift people out of the river, etc., with the platform. I did a reconnaissance on the river and on city boundaries. About 3% is where you've got access to the river. And most of that access is on City Park. And I know at City Park you can walk across the river, basically. And if it's in spate, then it'll be a runoff and people will be probably dead of hypothermia and they'll be swept down the river to Christina Lake by the time the fire truck gets there. It's a fatuous comment, I believe. With the reduction of the Canadian dollar, it's about an extra $56 per ratepayer. So it's near enough about $576 or something like that. Now, I'm not sure that I can afford it, and I'm not sure that the old ladies who have suffered tremendously, I don't think that they can afford it. The thing that might be possible is that we could, a bit like, perhaps not like what Ontario did, but cancel the contract, but take up another contract for a more useful truck, as I understand it, which would be a pumper at probably 500,000 instead of $1 million. It would save us a lot of money. And that pumper would be able to meet the underwriter's requirements for keeping our rates at a reasonable cost. That 100-foot ladder, one of the additional problems the city have got, is that very few of the people in the fire department can drive it. It's a large truck, you need a special license. And I don't think that many, I believe one has a license, but I'm not sure how many others. So therefore, the truck, if that person is available, he's the only person, it stays in the fire hall, while the other one's going to do their business. And the other thing about a 100-foot ladder, up and around Grand Forks, with all the power cables around, I would hesitate to elevate it at all. And some of the places where, and the other thing is, in fact, which I haven't thought about, and that is, are Area D going to help fund the fire truck? But also, I think that there needs to be a complete.
Mr. Mayor, we actually have a 5-minute limit according to our bylaws on comments from the public at the end of a council meeting. This is about on 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I understand the point made from Councillor Shagan. I can make a couple of points about his lack of activity in the council in the last year, actually. But however, I'm not going to name names.
With all due respect, please.
That's the end of my tirade, Your Worship. Thank you very much. Some ideas to think about. It is not simple, I know.
Did you like fire trucks when you were young?
That's the problem, because when I mentioned it to the previous council, I said, they're going to play with their new toy, and
Bet you never had one.
they said, oh, there's not a toy, we're going to have these people. We used to talk about going and playing with our toys. Our toys were different. They were vehicles that we went in and fought in and either killed the enemy or died in the vehicles themselves. It was rather different. It was a guaranteed situation where you were likely to really put your life on the line.
Thank you.
Okay, just if I may, very quick, it won't be 5 minutes.
Your name?
Can you identify yourself?
My name is Hamilton, James Hamilton.
Thank you.
It seemed very illogical to me that a bylaw has been brought into this council and went through first, second, and third readings. And only one member of the council that had actually read it. And then everybody heard what was possibly wrong with that bylaw. And then it was decided that they'd pass it anyway and not have a discussion of what these possible changes would be. But we'd have to leave it up to the experts later to make the changes. But this, am I correct? I'm just asking, did this bylaw that apparently most of the councillors didn't read, did it actually go through tonight? And then we're going to trust the staff to make the changes? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's not true. No.
Not totally true.
No, and
Because there
I
wasn't
read
a-
it, and I know I have a good friend who is a builder developer, and I know he read it and discussed it with me. Right here, read it.
Yeah.
Councillor Butler did bring her concerns forward. I read it. There was some legal jargon in there, and I felt having some knowledge that when some of the points she made, I could see her point, but I felt that there was enough margins within this bylaw that we would be well covered, as did the friend of mine who has been a builder and a developer with a lot of experience. And he said, I don't see any problems with it. So although Councilor Butler did bring her concerns forward, they can be looked at, but right now, basically it's speculative.
Okay,
But the question I
And other
answered,
people have read it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't know. We're not saying I read it. We don't do that kind of report card.
in response to the question where I said, yes, it was passed, but not without study, because I myself as mayor also read it. And going out on a limb beyond my scope, I am in the industry. And I find nothing wrong with the overall concept of the bylaw in itself as a whole. I mean, every issue cannot be dissected because it's not applicable to the majority of the citizens. This is directed mostly at new subdivisions. So the majority of the citizens aren't affected unless you're a developer. And the elements that are in there, which are left open for, let's say, scrutiny or possible misinterpretation, will be addressed. We had the assurance. And if we cannot trust our staff, then the city's got a serious problem.
So are you saying that for some members of the council, you're just here to rubber stamp what the experts say? Is that what?
That's not what I said.
That's not what you're saying.
That's not what I said. When it got third reading, yes, there was an admission that everybody had not read the document. But we still had up until final reading, which was tonight. By this point, the majority of council are aware of what the bylaw holds. So I am not sitting here in front of you protecting staff. I am telling you what the real facts are. We have read it. Yes, we do represent the citizens. In due diligence, we do our duty as sworn elected officials. Otherwise, we would not have passed it tonight.
Fine, so my last question would be, whenever we get a new proposition for a new bylaw, do I have the assurance of every council member that every one of you will read it before the first meeting?
To better that, every bylaw is posted on the City of Grand Forks' website. So if you feel there's a discrepancy in it, you yourself, like Councillor Ross, I know possibly yourself will not understand it, but you can also get somebody like Councillor Ross did, like other councillors did, get all the information out there that is at your disposal to dissect it
I
and
don't
then
have a
come
problem.
forward.
I'm asking you the one thing. Will every one of you read every bylaw before you vote on it? Read it all the way through and not rubber stamp it? Is that a fair question? Will
It's a
you?
fair question. Hopefully, yes.
Will you, Councillor?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
I have just
Okay.
assured you that as our sworn in elected officials, we will do that.
Splendid.
I don't know what else I can tell you.
Wonderful.
Do we have any other questions from the gallery? We do have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Thompson. Adjourn.
I'd have to